font, it immediately puts us in mind of a Cold War spy thriller like James Bond. That's the same genre that this show is going to be emulating. The Moscow font is also the same that we saw in Black Widow and in Captain America Civil War, another couple of MCU spy pictures. So that sets this series directly in like that wing of the MCU. So we open with former CIA agent Everett Ross, who we first met in Captain America Civil War, and then we saw again in Black Panther and Wakanda Forever. And in the opening scene, he's revealed to be, spoiler alert, a Skrull. The big question is, was he a Skrull the whole time, or is he like recently replaced by these aliens? I've got a strong theory that he has been a Skrull for years. We're going to talk about that in a video that's releasing tomorrow, so subscribe to make sure you don't miss a thing.
Cause you don't want to miss a thing.
Very good. He goes to meet Agent Prescott.
Oh yeah, why does he look so familiar?
That is Richard Dormer, who played Beric Dondarrion in Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah, Flaming Sword guy, cool.
That's right, high five. Now, as for Ross, we covered his backstory thoroughly in our Secret Invasion recap video, but very quick refresher, in Wakanda Forever, he was arrested for leaking information to the Wakandans, but in the post-credits scene, he was safe from prison by Okoye. Though Ross says of Fury, he's on Saber! So we saw Saber in the Marvel's trailer. It's the floating space headquarters of SWORD. That's the government agency that basically polices everything that happens in outer space. Monica Rambeau is an agent of SWORD, and we see at the end of WandaVision that she was called up to the agency by a Skrull who was working for Fury.
He'd like to meet with you. Where?
So Skrulls have had an open partnership with humanity, working together to keep their world safe. But now, something has changed. I've got some theories on that, which I'll talk about in just a bit. Basically, after S.H.I.E.L.D. fell and Captain America Winter Soldier, SWORD took their place. And so far, they've mostly dealt with protecting Earth from space. Prescott's opening monologue hits pretty hard for people like us living in the real world.
Imagine a world where information can't be trusted.
And this is one of the big problems in the real world today. Nobody trusts the news or what they read on the internet. Spreading misinformation is far too easy, so we don't know who to trust. This is the perfect setting for a spy thriller filled with nefarious agents who can change their form at any time. The tagline of the Secret Invasion Comics campaign was even, "Who do you trust?"
Who do you trust?
But our world of misinformation would be even worse in the MCU, where crazy stuff is happening every day. Gods, aliens, robots, giant god alien robots sticking out of the ocean.
Great shades of Elvis. Person, what are you reading? What is that?
Oh, this? Why, this is sun-dried tomato chicken with zucchini noodles, and it's delicious, too.
Hey, did you hire a private chef? Because I did not approve that expense.
Oh, no, boss. No private chef, and it's not takeout. Plus, I didn't make this. This is a meal. So now, plus they offer... Plus, guys, you know, it's First Factor Box. Thanks again to... Now, all of these events, First Factor Box. Thanks again to Factor for sponsoring this video. Back to the Easter eggs. When we get a good look at Prescott's newspaper clippings, we see the chain of terrorism that he talks about later on. Now, all of these events have happened since the blip, which makes perfect sense. The blip removed half the people in the world, so missing people would be very easy to replace. And these replaced people are now Skrull agents who are sowing discord around the world.
Yeah, so what's their plan anyways?
So, the way Prescott spells it out, the Skrulls stir up civil unrest in different countries, like in Wakanda Forever, when we learned that the U.S. wanted regime change in Wakanda.
The president wants to take offensive action against Wakanda.
And we see this clipping about the leader of the Colombian rebels gaining popularity with the young people. So this guy is obviously a Skrull who starts a rebellion in Colombia that makes him the leader of the nation. Now, an extremist leading a nation of disaffected young rebels is also very similar to what Gravik is doing with the Skrulls. So consider this little clipping a bit of clever foreshadowing. So the Skrulls stir up unrest in one country, and as Prescott explains,
Argentina tracks Colombia. Colombia tracks the Philippines. A violent chain reaction. You realize that the entire world is at war?
the Skrull plan is to undermine the governments of the world, to weaken them, so the leaders are easy to replace with their own people. This is very similar to what happens in the Secret Invasion comic book. So let me take a moment to explain that excellent crossover event. So in the comics, the Illuminati were a group of heroes who tried to stave off threats before they happened. In retaliation for the Kree-Skrull War spilling over into Earth, the Illuminati went to the Skrull homeworld and blew some stuff up to warn the Skrulls to leave Earth alone. But this had the opposite effect, and the Skrull Emperor swore vengeance on them. A few years later, Galactus ate the Skrull homeworld, leaving them all homeless, like they are in the MCU, but more on that in just a bit. So these homeless Skrulls started to tout a prophecy that their world would be lost, and then they would claim a blue world as their own, which many thought meant Earth. So they began a slow, years-long invasion of Earth where they were replacing key leaders and superheroes. This was part of a murderer's row of Marvel crossover events. It started in 2006 with Civil Civil War, which divided the heroes and weakened them, and actually that Civil War may have been started by the Skrulls. Then there was Secret Invasion, where the people lost faith in the governments after so many heroes turned out to be Skrulls. And this was followed by Dark Reign, where the villains essentially took over Earth, something we might see happen in Captain America Brave New World and the Thunderbolts. So in the comics event, several heroes were revealed to be Skrulls, and Spider-Woman was even the Skrull Empress in disguise. The crossover ended with Norman Osborn finally being the one to pull the trigger and kill her. And so the government made him the new director of...
Life is messy. Now there's 85% more Tide in every power pod.
And I think something similar could happen in this show, with Harrison Ford's Thunderbolt Ross becoming the new president of the United States. And Ross is going to take a much more hardline stance against Superman. And I think something similar could happen in this show, with Harrison Ford's Thunderbolt Ross becoming the new president of the United States.
Oh
and
yeah,
Ross
my man's Harrison Ford about to be up in the MCU universe.
In this show, with Harrison Ford's Thunderbolt Ross becoming the new president of the United States. And Ross is going to take a much more hardline stance against superhumans. Some of these headlines say things like terror in Munich, mass shooting, London explosion, here we see a plane exploding in midair, and terrorism hits the UK. And then Prescott speed runs through the events of Captain Marvel, recounting how Fury and Carol Danvers promised to find the Skrulls a new home. Also, maybe I'm paranoid here, but look, this broken window pane looks like Pikachu. So Ross attacks Prescott, kills him, and escapes on foot, where he contacts Maria Hill. Now, Maria Hill worked for Nick Fury at S.H.I.E.L.D. and then undercover at Stark Industries. The last time we saw her was when she was Blip in Infinity War. But then it seemed like she and Fury were still coordinating security on Earth. Post-Blip, though, Fury's priorities changed, and we'll explain why in just a bit. And then Ben Mendelsohn returns as Talos, still wearing the human face he first imitated as Agent Keller in Captain Marvel.
Yeah, Jessica just really fits that face.
I guess so, yeah. Now, the last time we saw Talos was when it was revealed that he and his wife Soren were actually impersonating Nick Fury and Maria Hill in Spider-Man Far From Home, which is perfect because that movie, like this show, dealt with supervillains using misinformation as a weapon. Since then, Soren was killed by the same Skrull faction that's now trying to take over the Earth. Now, Talos is quick to point out this division between the Skrulls. After Hill says, "Who's one of you?" he replies with,
He's one of them.
telling the audience to not paint all the Skrulls with one large brush. And then we go to the opening credits, which show a green world. Is that the Skrull home world, or is this Earth slowly being absorbed by the Skrulls? There are clouds over New York that look like alien flying saucers, paying homage to the 50s sci-fi invasion movies. Fury is distorted. Everybody looks like an impressionist painting to reflect the amorphous nature of the Skrulls, and the amorphous nature of truth in this new world. We see the Moscow explosion from later in the episode, Big Ben, the White House, and a man and a Skrull shaking hands as the Skrull slowly begins to melt and change away. And then, my favorite part of this, the iris of an eye that actually looks otherworldly like a fungus, in the same way that the Skrulls are on Earth, slowly spreading and growing out of sight.
A perfect substrate.
That's right. And the fungus might also be a callback to another classic alien invasion movie, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where humans are slowly replaced by a sentient fungus from outer space. And back to the credits, this iris slowly morphs into a human eyeball to show that these otherworldly forces are imitating human beings. And then, after the credits, there's another callback to classic movie alien imagery. Nick Fury arrives on Earth via a shaft of light in the woods. The setting might remind you of E.T., and the light pouring from the ship is similar to the imagery in that movie. But also, the way the light distorts Fury is similar to the aliens at the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Fury being out of focus is also a visual cue about his character. He doesn't know who he is anymore. His mission is not as clear as it used to be. And so, if he's going to solve this external problem about the Skrulls, first he's got to resolve his own personal issues about where he fits in the world, post-Blip. When we've seen Fury in the past, he's always been this suave, over-prepared agent who's a keen judge of character. Nothing ever seems to face him because he's always had a contingency plan, the heroes of Earth.
I have you.
But with the Blip, the heroes failed. Fury put his faith in them and they lost. Worse yet, they lost because they fought like little kids in Civil War, so they were divided when Thanos showed up on Earth. Thanos was also a threat that Fury could have never seen coming, so it makes sense that he would retreat into space to take some time and learn about the threats waiting out there in the universe. But this series is going to show that the greatest threat was right in his backyard all along. Talos shows him a Skrull plant that has adapted to living on Earth, that was planted by his wife Soren. Now, this isn't just like a little throwaway detail. Planting native seeds is an important way that colonizers colonizers claim a new land. They bring a bit of home with them and change the environment to what they're used to at home. Planting crops, like Gravik's people are doing, is also a way of literally putting down roots, a way of saying we're not going anywhere for a long time. And then we find out that Soren, his wife in the movie Captain Marvel and in Far From Home, has died, killed by Gravik's Skrull faction.
So yeah, what's up with that? What's up with these different Skrull factions?
Well, Talos talks about this. He says there is a council and that he was kicked off of it. Basically, Carol Danvers and Fury never found the Skrulls a suitable homeworld. So now a younger generation of Skrulls are frustrated by this, and they have decided to make Earth their homeworld. They probably think they would do a better job running the planet than the humans. And after all, look at us.
Yeah, that's fair.
But recruiting young people to be extremists and terrorists is like page 1 in the terrorist handbook. Gavrilo Principe, the idiot who shot Franz Ferdinand in the start of World War I, was recruited by a group called the Black Hand. ISIS and Al-Qaeda recruit disaffected young men, and actually so did the Ku Klux Klan. So this disaffected youth is being led by Gravik, the big bad of the series. Now, Talos claimed that Gravik's people killed Soren, but I wonder if we might get a twist ending here where Talos is actually the bad guy pulling the strings. Maybe Soren found out about his plan to take over the Earth, and they argued, so he had her killed. He would be hiding this so well from people that even his own daughter doesn't know that she's been working for her dad this entire time.
Good theory, person.
Thanks, man. And by the way, notice that Fury is all older, he's got a gut, but he still wears turtlenecks, but instead of wearing like a tight black turtleneck, he's wearing a cozy knives out sweater.
Yeah, I guarantee you that guy's fake.
You know what? I think so too. And so is his lamp. He wants people to think that he's over the hill so they'll never see him coming. We briefly check in on the White House where Dermot Mulroney is playing President Ritson. Although they don't explicitly say this, I think he's a Republican president, judging by the portraits of Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan we see here. They do a classic walk and talk through the White House, which is a hallmark of the White House drama The West Wing. Pretty funny, since Richard Schiff was on that show and he played the Secretary of State in Wakanda Forever. Now that job was last held by Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, who might now be the Vice President. So if Ritson dies or turns out to be a Skrull, that would open the door for Harrison Ford to be the new President of the United States.
Get off my plane.
So, since Ritson's the president, then he is probably the American president that won a regime change in Wakanda that we mentioned earlier. And then, James Rhodes, aka Rhodey, aka War Machine, aka Iron Patriot, gives him the info that Fury has left Saber and is now on Earth. Maybe this is bad news because they're both Skrulls and they don't want Fury poking around in their business. Now, the last time we saw Rhodey, he was asking Sam why he didn't want to be Captain America.
Why didn't you take up the mantle?
So, if Rhodey's a Skrull, then maybe he would have wanted a weak idiot like John Walker to be the new Cap, which is why he didn't press Sam to take the shield. Anyways, Rhodey clearly works in the White House. Maybe he's the new Secretary of Defense, or he could be a liaison of superhuman affairs, a post that Vision had in the brilliant The Visions comic book series. So, Fury goes on a walk and sees a couple suspicious people, and at the end of the episode we learn that these people were both Gravik. Here we see Fury's old man act in full effect as he tricks MI6 into bringing him to their Moscow headquarters.
What's MI6?
It's the British version of the CIA. They're in the James Bond movies.
Oh yeah, James Bond, I know that.
And then we meet the great Olivia Colman, Sonia Fallsworth. I mean, this is Academy Award winner Olivia Colman. Incredible. She says,
Nick Fury, or the ghost of Paul Robeson.
Now, Paul Robeson was a huge celebrity in the early 20th century. He was an actor, an athlete, and a singer. And, like she says, he was maybe most famous for singing Old Man River in the movie Showboat. But Robeson was also an unapologetic communist and a supporter of the Soviet Union, which is why she thinks a large black man in Russia's capital could be him. Fury points out all the clocks in her office.
You have some sort of clock fetish that you've been keeping from me all these years.
But notice that all of these clock faces point to a different time, meaning that you can't trust any of their faces. Like, you can't trust the faces of anybody you meet in this show because they might be a Skrull. She name-checks Thanos in the blip.
I think Thanos' snap changed you.
And talks about how this event changed Fury. It made him weaker. And I'm going to talk about that weakness and how Fury's going to overcome it a little bit later in the video. The song Fury puts on the record player is called Equinox by John Coltrane. Thematically, that's an interesting choice because an equinox is a planetary event that occurs twice a year for the longest and shortest days of the year. So, like the Skrulls and humanity, it shows how Earth has two sides. We have the summer of our youth and the winter of our lives, kind of like the aging Nick Fury. We then go 300 kilometers south of Moscow where a fresh Skrull recruit says the password,
home in my own skin.
And this is a nice piece of writing because the Skrulls are tired of pretending to be another race. They just want a homeland where they can be themselves. This compound is called New Skrullos, named after the Skrull homeworld from the comics. And then we meet a grown-up Gaia who we met as a child in Captain Marvel right here. And now she's played by Emilia Clarke. Now she, of course, is most famous for playing Daenerys Targaryen on Game of Thrones, making her one of the few actors to play a character in Star Wars, the MCU, and Game of Thrones. But she was not the first actor to do this. Let me know who you think the first actor was happens down in the comments below. New Skrullos is set in an abandoned nuclear power plant. Now, I'm wondering if this is a plant where some nuclear disaster took place, kind of like in Chernobyl in the real world. In the comics, Chernobyl became a vampire kingdom ruled by Dracula. So maybe like the radiation of this plant doesn't affect the Skrulls like it would the humans. I mean, notice the cars here are all from the 1980s, so maybe there's something to that Chernobyl theory. And maybe they don't want to use the name Chernobyl because it was a real-world disaster that killed dozens of people. Gaia says the warriors stay in human forms. They don't slip up when they're in the field, which is very convenient for the budget of the makeup department. We see them hook humans up to these machines that we did see in Captain Marvel. Basically, Skrulls use this machine to scrub through Carol Danvers' thoughts.
Do we have any information we can act on?
Basically, these are reading the human's thoughts and scouring their memories for information. And in this episode, we see this Skrull use his Skrull physiology to pull memories from a human being. Now, in Captain Marvel, we learned that the Skrulls can only pull recent memories, not like the core idiosyncrasies that make us who we really are. Like Fury tells Danvers that this is how she can always tell if he's the real him.
A toast is cut diagonally, I can't eat it.
In this scene, this woman is playing a Skrull named Kriega. In the comics, Kriega is the Super Skrull, who is one of the few Skrulls with superpowers who can replicate the abilities of the Fantastic Four. Then Gaia looks up and sees Gravik's silhouette above her, which reminded me of other shady operators rolling from behind the scenes in the MCU.
The leaders of the Guild of Calamitous Intent?
No, but that's a really good reference. This is like the World Security Council, the small board of people that Fury reported to in the Avengers. One of these members, Gideon Malik, was later revealed to be an agent of Hydra, while their leader, Secretary Pierce, was also Hydra.
Hydra.
So seeing Gravik in this way is yet another reminder that you can't trust people in authority in the MCU. Anyone, even the president, could be a Skrull. And then we see that Fury planted a tiny camera inside the eye of an owl. Fitting because owls are known to be old and wise, like Fury. He also replaced its left eye, the same eye of Fury's it has replaced. Remember, for decades, Fury let everybody think that this eye was missing just so he could install a backup ocular reader in case S.H.I.E.L.D. was ever compromised.
You need to keep both eyes open.
And the same thing here. Fury is letting people believe that he's weak, that he's wounded, when he's really running games within games. Later, Fury says that he wants to stop Sonya because she's far too violent and she'll try to eradicate every Skrull that she finds. And maybe that's what Gravik wants, to lure the humans into vilifying his people, so the entire Skrull Council will support his plan to invade the planet. Gaia goes on a mission to get the bombs from an artist, and right here, notice this abstract depiction of Iron Man on the wall. Now, we've seen Tony Stark depicted on art before, as fan art, as graffiti, on tattoos, a memorial, but showing him as an abstract piece of art is interesting. Abstract art took hold after World War II, when the world order had changed forever and people were searching for their place on the planet. In the same way, the old age of heroes is gone in the MCU, and the battle of good versus evil took hold after idiot like Big Machine, aka Iron Patriot, gives him the info that Fury has left Saber and is now on Earth. So if maybe he's the new second. This is Academy of War. She name-checked Equinox by we have the summer of our youth and the winter of our lives, kind of like the aging Nick Fury. We then go 300 kilometers south of Moscow. They can be them. Now she, of course, is most new Skrullos is set. So maybe like the Radiate, and maybe they don't want to use the name Chernobyl because it was a real-world disaster that killed dozens of people. Gaia says the warriors stay in human forms. They don't slip up when they're in the field, which is very convenient for the budget of the makeup department. We see them hook humans up to these machines that we did see in Captain Marvel. Basically, Skrulls use this machine to scrub through Carol Danvers' thoughts.
Do we have any information we can act on?
Basically, these are reading the human's thoughts and scouring their memories for information. And in this episode, we see this Skrull use his Skrull physiology to pull memories from a human being. Now, in Captain Marvel, we learned that the Skrulls can only pull recent memories, not like the core idiosyncrasies that make us who we really are. Like Fury tells Danvers that this is how she can always tell if he's the real him.
A toast is cut diagonally, I can't eat it.
In this scene, this woman is playing a Skrull named Kriega. In the comics, Kriega is the Super Skrull, who is one of the few Skrulls with superpowers who can replicate the abilities of the Fantastic Four. Then Gaia looks up and sees Gravik's silhouette above her, which reminded me of other shady operators rolling from behind the scenes in the MCU. The
leaders of the Guild of Calamitous Intent?
No, but that's a really good reference. This is like the World Security Council, the small board of people that Fury reported to in the Avengers. One of these members, Gideon Malik, was later revealed to be an agent of Hydra, while their leader, Secretary Pierce, was also Hydra.
Hydra.
So seeing Gravik in this way is yet another reminder that you can't trust people in authority in the MCU. Anyone, even the president, could be a Skrull. And then we see that Fury planted a tiny camera inside the eye of an owl. Fitting, because owls are known to be old and wise, like Fury. He also replaced its left eye, the same eye of Fury's it has replaced. Remember, for decades, Fury let everybody think that this eye was missing just so he could install a backup ocular reader in case S.H.I.E.L.D. was ever compromised.
You need to keep both eyes open.
And the same thing here. Fury is letting people believe that he's weak, that he's wounded, when he's really running games within games. Later, Fury says that he wants to stop Sonya because she's far too violent and she'll try to eradicate every Skrull that she finds. And maybe that's what Gravik wants, to lure the humans into vilifying his people so the entire Skrull Council will support his plan to invade the planet. Gaia goes on a mission to get the bombs from an artist, and right here, notice this abstract depiction of Iron Man on the wall. Now, we've seen Tony Stark depicted on art before, as fan art, as graffiti, on tattoos, and memorial, but showing him as an abstract piece of art is interesting. Abstract art took hold after World War II, when the world order had changed forever and people were searching for their place on the planet. In the same way, the old age of heroes is gone in the MCU, and the battle of good versus evil is no longer as black and white. And I love the scene where Sam Jackson mentally tortures the guy. He's really channeling his inner Jules.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
We also learned that, holy hell, Talos is 130 years old and only just started middle age. No wonder some Skrulls think that they're superior to human beings. When he asks Fury what purchase he made for his midlife crisis, he says,
The Avengers.
referencing how he formed the team in the first Avengers film. Talos chases after Gaia and breaks the news about his wife to her.
She's dead.
And it seems like that Gaia has now turned to the good side, but then by the end, has she? So the two bags were marked with an infrared X. They were then passed off to other Skrulls, so maybe the bombs were emptied out then. Hill says, it's empty, but they looked pretty full when Gaia was carrying them. So maybe Gaia was setting up her dad and Fury, or maybe she really did try to help them. But if that's the case, if Talos is in charge, he would have told Gravik's people to switch out the bags. Anyways, lots of spy stuff, wheels within wheels, lots of scenarios and suspicions to figure out here. Fury goes to an old Cold War spy bar where he is recognized immediately. He sits down with Hill across a chessboard, which is appropriate because it's in Russia and those guys love their chess. But also, chess is a game of feints, of looking several moves ahead, and of trying to guess your opponent's move well in advance, just like people in a spy movie. He says,
Spooks like me, bad shots.
You can't say that.
No, you can't say that.
And this is clever because that word is both a nickname for a CIA operative and a racial slur used against black people in the 1950s, which I learned from Back to the Future. Fury talks about his crisis of faith, how after Thanos he can no longer rely on the heroes. So it makes sense that he would go to space himself to make S.W.O.R.D. a stronger agency for deterring extraterrestrial threats. Maybe if the Saber Station would have been orbiting Earth, then Thanos' army would have never made it through the blockade, just like Tony wanted.
What if next time aliens roll up to the club, and they will, they couldn't.
Just to make sure.
But you just said Fury was faking his lack of self-confidence.
Well, I don't... Okay, so I think Fury has partially lost faith in himself, but mostly he's lost faith in the heroes. It's why in this episode, he doesn't contact any heroes or anyone from an outside agency. He only wants people he can trust, who he knows are definitely not Skrulls. So he keeps it down to a team of 3. But Hill took offense to this, that Fury left her behind, and she basically says that he's too old for the game.
You always told me there is no shame in walking away when the steps are uncertain.
And maybe the fact that Fury no longer wears an eye patch is significant here. It's a way of saying that he no longer has anything to hide. He's not a master spy. He's not Fury. He's just Nick. Now, if Maria Hill is dead, then this is a pretty heartbreaking final scene between the two of them, when she basically says that he's lost a step.
Protect your footing. Otherwise, someone's going to get hurt.
Going forward, a wounded Nick Fury won't have his #1 lieutenant to back him up. Gaia tells her dad that the attack is going to be on Unity Day, a Russian national holiday that's been celebrated since the early 17th century, when a popular uprising expelled Polish-Lithuanian forces from Moscow. Again, we're seeing references to revolts, uprisings, events that destabilize the established order to create a regime change, exactly what the Skrulls are planning. Gravik shows off to Fury that he's been watching them all along, before detonating his bombs. And then, yeah, man, R.I.P. Maria Hill, a character who has been with us since the Avengers. I mean, like, I guess she could always come back as a Skrull, or maybe return in 7 seasons of a non-canon MCU show, but I think Cody Smulders is gone for good. And just a reminder, everyone, to take the hassle out of eating healthy, give Factor a try. Head to Factor75.com and use your promo code ScreenCrush50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. But we want to hear from you about Secret Invasion. What did you think of the episode? What do you think is going to happen next? Let me know your thoughts down below or leave a comment for me on Twitter. And it's the first time
that's actually tough. That girl Maria Hill, nah, bro. She was a real one, bro. Even though it was kind of pissed me off that she was saying how Nick Fury's a step behind and shit. Nah, bro. She was one of the last real ones. Been around since the Avenger times. Nah, bro. Since the first Avenger movie, like, nah, bro. We keep losing them. We just keep losing the OGs, bro.
This transformation is real. Now any guy can temporarily cover grays and create a fuller, defined look for beard and brows. New, just for men, one day.
Thanks to Brilliant.org for sponsoring this video.
Okay, Lucky, I'm driving with one hand right now. Oh, here we go. Now I got two.
Hey, welcome back, Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Erie, and spoilers are ahead for the first episode of Secret Invasion. So, in the first 10 minutes of the episode, it's revealed that our old friend from Captain America: Civil War and the Black Panther films, Everett K. Ross, is a Skrull. Now, the question is, how long has he been a Skrull?
Hold on! That's from a movie?
Now, the question is, how long has he been a Skrull? Was it just for this series, or has it been
The whole time, man, the whole time you were... The whole time!
Now, at first, I didn't think that the MCU would waste an actor like Martin Freeman on such a quick death, and it seemed like he was being set up for a Wakanda Forever sequel. But I went back through the MCU, and it actually would have made total sense for Ross to have been a Skrull since day one. And if he was, that means that there has been a faction of Skrulls working against the human race for years, and this Skrull faction would have caused the superhero Civil War, Thanos' snap, and the ultimate end of the Avengers. So, let's take a trip back through the history of the MCU and answer the question of when Ross became a Skrull, and how long have the Skrulls been evil. I've got some theories here that are going to blow your mind. First, let's talk about what the Skrulls actually want here and what exactly they're trying to do. So, in the comics, the Skrulls have been villains ever since their first appearance in Fantastic Four issue 2. A comic book that ends with the Skrulls being forced to turn into cows, and then years later, some people eat the meat from those cows and get the superpowers to see through Skrull disguises.
What's that got to do with this?
Nothing. It's just a fun, weird detail that I love pointing out at parties.
Oh, you go to parties?
So anyways, the Skrulls were always bad guys in the comics, but in the MCU, they pulled the old movie villain switcheroo on us, and Captain Marvel revealed that the Skrulls were merely refugees trying to escape the Holocaust at the hands of the Kree. So, for 30 years, the Skrulls have been searching for a new planet, and even though Carol had a ship that could travel further and faster than any ever created before, the Skrulls still never found a suitable homeworld. So now, some Skrulls are thinking that they should just take over the Earth. Now, in the comics, something similar happens. Galactus eats the Skrull throne world, Skrullos, so the Skrulls begin to believe in a religious prophecy that after their world is destroyed, they will come to inhabit a little world which they take to mean Earth. Now the question for this video is, how long have some Skrulls been plotting to take over the planet? In the show, they specify that this is an attitude that has evolved more post-Blip, after Fury disappeared and Danvers went off to help other planets.
She do right now?
You remember, she went off to help like all the planets that didn't have Avengers.
I'm covering a lot of territory. The things that are happening on Earth, they're happening everywhere.
But I think we're going to find out that some Skrulls have had their eyes on Earth for a very long time. They see how messy and violent humans are, how weak our physiology is, how short we live. And they know that Skrulls would do a better job running Earth than we do. I mean, we poison our skies instead of appreciating the world that we have. And that is why I think it's going to be revealed that certain MCU characters, like Ross and probably Rhodey, have been Skrulls all along.
What? Hey, person, are you ever worried that they'll replace you with an AI?
Welcome back. Screen crushers.
No, not really. But I am keeping up with AI, and we even use it here at the store for research, graphics editing, and a lot more. See, I'm not afraid AI is going to take my job, but it is going to make my job easier.
Wow, how'd you learn so much about AI?
Well, Doug, to understand AI, I had to learn about the core concepts behind it, things like AI, neural networking, and machine learning. And the best place to learn things like this is Brilliant.org. They're the sponsor of this video. Brilliant is a great way to challenge myself to learn something new every day, like science. See, I was a terrible math and science student in school. Maybe you were too. I especially love 6 times more effect, although it is easy to get sucked into a really good. I highly recommend the logic puzzles. They're fun and they build. Visit Brilliant and see if we can figure out exactly. The first 200 of you will get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription. Now, back to what I was saying. Alright, so let's go back through the history of Everett K. Ross in the MCU and see if we can figure out exactly when he was replaced with a Skrull. Let's start with Captain America Civil War. I love this movie. I think it's pretty much perfect. But the internet has criticized how for Zemo's plan to work, a lot of events had to line up like just perfectly. A lot of these events were not even under Zemo's control. For instance, Bucky had to be arrested at just the right time, and Zemo had no control over when that would happen. But there are other events in this movie that make a lot more sense if there was somebody else working besides Zemo. Somebody who wanted to make the heroes fight one another. A few years ago, Nando V Movies put out a great video about how Sharon Carter could have been Zemo's secret accomplice. After all, she does tell Steve where to find Bucky, and she brings Sam and Steve their gear. But Agent Ross was actually in a better position to sow discord among the heroes. So, when we first meet Ross, he is a commander of the CIA Deputy Task Force. The task force that I assume was to bring in Bucky because he was just framed for bombing the embassy. Remember, this was a time when the governments of the world were cracking down on superhumans. Secretary of State Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross had just spearheaded the adoption of the Sokovia Accords, which were meant to rein in enhanced individuals so they would effectively be reporting straight to the governments of the world. So Everett Ross is part of this initiative to keep heroes in check. His deputy task force is meant to apprehend enhanced individuals. There's one point where he even tells Cap about Bucky, and he says,
"Same thing that ought to happen here. Psychological evaluation and extradition."
Ross is talking to Captain America like that. Captain America, a war hero. So if he can tell Captain America, you need a psych eval, clearly he has no love for superhumans. Now, let's say that you're the Skrulls and you want to take over the Earth. The number one obstacle are the superheroes. So Skrull Ross joins a task force that is meant to neutralize superhuman threats. And then Ross takes away Sam and Steve's weapons and confines them to an office. And even specifies he thinks it should be a cell and not just an office.
You'll be provided with an office instead of a cell. And do me a favor, stay in it.
Now, let's suppose just for a second that Skrull Ross was working with Zemo. I don't know how, they know each other from their intel days, it doesn't matter. See, Zemo poses as the psychiatrist with an appointment to see Bucky, and this appointment just happens to coincide with an EMP charge being delivered to a power station.
Very rough time.
Yes, it was. Now remember, Ross was the one who insisted on a psych evaluation. So I could see him calling in Zemo at the exact time that Zemo needed to be near Bucky to activate his code words, right when the EMP was detonating. Zemo had to read the words at the precise moment of the power outage.
But couldn't he have just timed the delivery perfectly for that moment?
Sure, that could have happened. Now, let's go to Nando's theory that Sharon Carter was a Zemo plan. After her heel turn in Falcon the Winter Soldier, this theory actually seems very likely. She and Ross both work for the CIA. So, in Nando's video, he points out all the different ways Sharon nudges Steve into a battle with Tony Stark. For instance, no one on Steve's side takes a strong ideological viewpoint in the conflict. Like Tony's side, all believe that the heroes need to be kept in check. But Steve's team will do whatever he does because he's Captain America.
I do what he does, just so.
But Sharon actually convinces Steve to stand by his convictions and to not sign the Accords.
Even if the whole world is telling you to move, it's your duty to plant yourself in the tree, look them in the eye and say no.
So, if Sharon was a Zemo plant, then I can see Ross knowingly let her find out key information. For instance, like how Steve could find Bucky at the right moment so he would be arrested.
Wait, what do you mean the moment he was arrested? Explain that.
Okay, so, in order for Zemo's plan to work, Bucky had to have been arrested, right, and then brought into custody on the day that he was being called in to perform a psych evaluation and on the same day when the EMP charge was being delivered. It's too many variables for Zemo to have controlled alone. So in this case, it's Sharon Carter who tells Steve where to find Bucky, and the only reason Bucky was even captured alive is because Steve was there to defend him against the police. Ross could have helped Sharon in other ways. He could have let Sharon into the locker where they kept Steve's weapons. But Without these weapons, the airport fight in Civil War wouldn't have gone very far. And remember, this was the match that lit off the superhero Civil War that culminates with the fight with Iron Man at the end of the movie. And also, when Bucky's activated and he's going on a rampage through the building, guess who tells Steve where to find him?
Sub-level 5 East Wing then.
Hell, maybe we'll find out that Sharon Carter was a Skrull and Zemo was not even aware that he had help. The point is that Ross was in a key position to feed information to Sharon Carter or to help Zemo's plan along the way. If he is a Skrull operative, then it would have been his goal to sow discord between the heroes. So he's in a unique position to help kickstart the superhero Civil War. So Ross could have been one of many Skrull operatives in the CIA who were put in place to suppress superhuman activity. But then, in Captain America Civil War, he accidentally discovers the Mother Lode. Prince of Wakanda dresses up as a giant cat with vibranium claws. The Wakandans have kept their technology hidden from the rest of the world for centuries, but they couldn't hide their tech from Thanos' forces. So we can assume that extraterrestrials, like the Skrulls, have the ability to detect Wakanda's true technology. After the Prince of Wakanda shows up with superpowers, the Skrulls would have scanned Wakanda and found out they have all this advanced tech that they've kept hidden from the rest of the world. And this is when Skrull Ross would have gotten a new mission, to get close to the Kingdom of Wakanda and learn about their technology. Ross's last monologue in the movie is him talking to Zemo.
You step out, right? Please, step out.
Now, Zemo is a prisoner that the Wakandans have a strong interest in because he killed their king. Zemo staying in Ross's custody means that he will always have a link to Wakanda. He even covers up that T'Challa is a superhuman in a vibranium catsuit just so he can stay on the new king's good side. And then, in Black Panther, Ross is setting up a sting operation to capture Ulysses Klaue. Klaue is an arms dealer who is known to have stolen vibranium from Wakanda. So Ross is placing himself in the proximity of a criminal who he knows the Wakandans are going to come after. Again, this places him near the Wakandans. And side note, just from this scene, I really wish that Klaue's meant to take this real.
Well, that is quite the arms of that. You don't expect him to also be sent down to keep up.
When T'Challa shows up at the casino, Ross tells him, I always thought it was a bit strange that Ross didn't report T'Challa being the Black Panther.
Where did it be because of, like, I don't know, diplomatic community?
Maybe, but in Civil War, Ross was a hardliner. He wanted to lock up Captain America. And as far as he knew, Wakanda was a poor nation, not a global superpower. The Sokovia Accords would have likely superseded any diplomatic immunity because their aim was to bring all enhanced individuals to heel. T'Challa did hand over Zemo to the authorities, and Ross makes it sound like this is why he kept T'Challa's powers quiet. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe, again, Ross's goal was to do reconnaissance to find out more information on Wakanda, which he does when he insists on being the person who interrogates Klaue.
No, I like him a lot, but he's in my custody now.
And if you really want to get to like a full-blown conspiracy theory, it's weird that they take Klaue to this lightly guarded CIA safe house instead of the embassy or a prison under heavy guard. Instead, they bring him to a hidden location with a prison cell wall facing an outside alley. At this point, it makes me think that Ross could have leaked the location to Killmonger. After all, Killmonger used to work for the CIA.
Because you used to work for the CIA to destabilize foreign countries.
So Ross uses back channels to feed Killmonger info. Now this implies that Ross would have known Killmonger was Wakandan and would want to return to his homeland, which I guess implies that he manipulated the whole conflict in Black Panther. So then Klaue tells Ross the truth about Wakanda.
Soldiers they sow it into their clones. The powers they see, their tech, their weapons.
Leading Ross to confront T'Challa.
Your father told the UN the Klaue stole all the vibranium you had, but now he's telling you you have more?
And then, when Killmonger attacks, Ross shields Nakia from bullets and takes one in the spine. But what really happened here? Nakia is a seasoned spy. She had plenty of time to duck away from this gunfire. If she was about to get shot, I think she would have gotten down. She should not need Ross to knock her out of the way of the gunfire. Unless the gunfire was never going to hit Nakia. Ross grabs her, and then, like using his enhanced Skrull senses, pushes himself into gunfire to get injured. He reasons that the Wakandans would use their tech to save his life because he just saved Nakia, and then he hits the jackpot when they bring him to their nation.
No, it's Kansas.
Now, through the rest of the movie, Ross is mostly a silent observer. He asks Shuri questions about her tech.
These train things, that's magnetic levitation, right?
Obviously.
And he quickly gives the good guys intel on Killmonger.
Started calling him Killmonger. He joined the JSOC Ghost Unit. Now these guys are serious. They will drop off the grid so they can commit assassinations and take down governments.
And in the climax of the movie, he fights to keep Wakanda from being ruled by a violent extremist. If Killmonger had spread Wakandan weapons across the world, then the planet would have been harder to take over if the Skrulls decided ever to act.
But in this show, Skrulls are trying to destabilize world government. So wouldn't Skrull Ross want to start World War III with Wakanda?
No. His mission is still reconnaissance, to get close to the Wakandans. Plus, World War III would poison the Earth with atomic radiation. Well, actually, then again, maybe that's what the Skrulls want. Maybe they want World War III. I mean, we do see that the Skrulls at the abandoned nuclear power plants aren't affected by radiation, so maybe they just want humans to blow each other up by the end of the series. And just a couple of final notes on the movie Black Panther. Ross may have been an Air Force pilot, but he does get the hang of flying a Wakandan craft very quickly. Maybe that's because he's had experience flying advanced ships before. And by the end of the movie, he has chosen to not reveal the Wakandans to his superiors.
Introducing my plan. Act now and get it for $25 when you bring your phones. It's your Verizon.
He says this is out of loyalty to Shuri for saving his life. But this guy works for the CIA. He commits treason the moment he decides to keep quiet about the largest threat to American security throughout the MCU, so I guess since Ultron.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It seems like you're like cherry-picking moments from old movies and retconning Skrull Ross into them.
Yes, I am going back through the MCU and looking at it through a different lens. Now, I don't think that when Ross was in Captain America Civil War, the Russo brothers were thinking, this guy's going to be a Skrull. But the MCU has brilliantly retconned many movies to make them resonate in future projects, like how Loki's scepter was not originally meant to be the Mind Stone.
Was it?
No, if it was originally the Mind Stone, then why would Thanos give somebody else an Infinity Stone?
Oh, yeah.
But look, even if you say that I'm reaching with all this, I'll accept that. But I 100% think that Ross is a Skrull in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. It's the only way his actions in that movie make any sense. So, in Wakanda Forever, we also find out that Ross was married to the director of the CIA, Val. This also puts a point in the column for him being a Skrull for a long time, because what better way to infiltrate America's intelligence structure than to marry into it? But that aside, let's look at Ross's actions in Wakanda Forever. First of all, I don't think the Skrulls had any idea that Talokan exists. I do think that they want vibranium, and they want lots of it. Vibranium is a metal that seems to be unique to Earth, and it would be key to making the Skrulls a dominant power in the universe once again. So, because the Skrulls want vibranium, Skrull Ross knows about Riri inventing a vibranium detector. But isn't it interesting that he doesn't immediately share this information with the Wakandans? If he really is looking out for Wakandan self-interest, wouldn't he have immediately told them, hey, America now has a vibranium detector? But he keeps that information to himself because it's actually the Skrulls who want the vibranium detector. Because look, when Shuri and Okoye confront him about the existence of the vibranium detector, he immediately shifts his loyalties. He doesn't say, classified, sorry, it's my job, I can go to prison. He caves right away and tells them everything he knows. You know why? Why? Because the original plan was for the Skrulls within the CIA to use the vibranium detector to find vibranium for themselves. But then, the boat was attacked by Talokan. Now, Ross does not know that it was Namora or Talokan. No one, not even the Skrulls, know Talokan exists. Ross thinks it was the Wakandans.
So it was you guys.
So, as soon as the Wakandans have the vibranium detector, they again become the Skrulls' only access to the metal. So Ross crawls back into bed with Wakanda. I mean, it is startling how fast Ross sells out his entire country and commits treason. He says it's because
I owe Shuri my life.
My guy, you repaid that debt when you fought to keep your brother on the throne. Think about it. He tips off a foreign power with highly classified information.
Our agents have been sentenced to death for less than what to do.
This is like if you gave nuclear codes to Russia at the height of the Cold War. Not only that, but he doesn't share any information with his own government. He just says,
my sources are telling me there's someone else.
And he uses Wakandan technology to have clandestine communications with a foreign power. And then he keeps the CIA from looking too closely at the Wakandans, and even gives them a cover story.
The Wakandans were recruiting her as part of their outreach program, nothing more.
And then the Secretary of State tells Ross about a highly classified executive decision about a major foreign policy change.
The president wants to take offensive action.
And Ross immediately tells Wakanda. So at this point, he is no longer a CIA operative. He is a lone wolf, a deep operative for Wakanda, which makes no sense. Maybe we're meant to think that he's a good guy who sees that the Wakandans are actually good people in the global stage, but this guy is supposed to be career CIA. It makes way more sense if he was a Skrull agent trying to gain the trust of the most powerful nation on Earth. And if the Skrulls really did decide to infiltrate the Earth post-blip, Wakanda Forever takes place within that timeline. And while we're on this topic, if Val was bugging Ross's beads the whole time, it's pretty stupid that they let him know about this regime change policy. Then again, maybe she didn't know the Secretary of State was going to drop that bomb on him. She doesn't pretty surprised. So, the movie ends with Skrull Ross apparently achieving his goal. He has won over the Wakandans, and they even spring him from prison. So, when we see Ross in this first episode, he's off the grid, working with Maria Hill. Later in the episode, Rhodey confirms that Hill and Fury are both essentially AWOL.
And the fact that I can use Agent Hill, Fury, and effectively AWOL.
meaning that Ross is AWOL too. He does not work for a government agency. And isn't it interesting that as soon as Ross gets out of jail, the first thing he does is start working with a group of off-the-grid agents whose mission is to root out Skrulls.
Yeah, but isn't it also possible that there's just a Skrull just for this TV show?
Totally, but that would be such a waste. The comic book Secret Invasion was so much fun because we found out that certain heroes have been Skrulls for years. Elektra, Spider-Woman, and founding Avenger Hank Pym. So this made us look back at like a few years of comics and stories and realize, oh, that's why they were acting so weirdly. It was planned out thoroughly in advance. So is the MCU. In the comics, we also knew that Hank Pym was a Skrull for most of the event. So it was like this ticking clock all the way through the series. It would have been really nice if we had that with Ross, like if he stuck around for a few episodes while we knew that he was a mole or a secret Skrull. This is like the drawback of doing this story in the MCU as a series. The comics created this massive crossover where every single title was affected and nobody knew who to trust. But in the MCU, it's harder to span a story across movies and TV shows, so they're keeping it as like a tight spy thriller. And that probably makes for better storytelling, but it means we won't get to see Skrulls pretending to be superheroes. Now, with Ross, I don't think it's likely that they're going to throw away all his character development we've seen over the years. So maybe he's only been recently impersonated. And then, like in Black Panther 3, we have a Gamora situation where Martin Freeman plays a version of the character who's never met the Wakandans before. But I really hope this show does dive deep into this and make characters that we love into real, evil Skrulls. It's the only way to make this premise work. If the show doesn't make us go back and question everything we know about the MCU, then it's wasted one of the greatest all-time Marvel comic stories. But what do you guys think? How long has Ross been a Skrull? Who else is a Skrull? Are you liking Secret Invasion so far? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.
At Mint Mobile, we'd like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot. We charge you a little. They put their names on it.
Thanks to Rocket Money for sponsoring this video.
So you think the same people are behind all of this?
Not people. Skrulls.
Welcome back to Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy. So Secret Invasion has revealed that the Skrulls are planning something huge. They're replacing everyone. They can look like anyone and you can trust no one. And they seem to be planning to trigger a dirty bomb that will start World War III. But there's something else going on here. We have a theory on what the Skrulls are actually planning, and it explains Nick Fury Stark's secret in the show. A terrible sin reveals why the Skrulls never found a home. There is a huge twist coming, and it's going to connect to a conspiracy that we uncovered, something that, trust me, you won't see coming. And it will connect to Captain America 4 and the Thunderbolts and even a much bigger conflict in Phase 6. So we've got something really cool in store for you in this video.
I have had it with these monkey-fighting Skrulls on this Monday to Friday plane.
The show's main villain is Gravik. He's preying on the rage of young, displaced Skrulls, and they are angry and blame Nick Fury.
But why? What did he do?
Well, back in Captain Marvel, Fury and Carol Danvers made a promise to help the Skrulls find a new home. Now, the Skrulls are a displaced people, like space refugees. They lost their home in the Kree War and found refuge on Earth. Despite the promise being made back in the 1990s, the Skrulls are still stuck on Earth. This is why Gravik blames Fury for the broken promise to his people.
He took your abandonment that much out of.
Now, take that and apply it to the conceit of Back to the Future, which is the Jungian Doug, where did you get all those toys?
Oh, credit cards.
Doug, did you overspend at PetSmart again?
Maybe. But finances are so confusing.
No, they're really not. Well, not if you use the mobile app Rocket Money. See, Rocket Money helps you to save more and spend less. For instance, Rocket Money, that's why more than Rocket Money helps you to plan to rocketmoney.com/screencrush or click the link in the description below or click the QR code here. Now, back to what I was saying. In the comic book version of Secret Invasion, which was written by Brian Michael Bendis, the Skrulls invade Earth because of a religious crusade. They believe that Earth is their promised land. The MCU is taking obvious creative liberties with the source material, which is fine if it gives an interesting story. Unlike the Skrulls in the comics, Gravik isn't using religion as a weapon, and I don't believe the Skrulls want Earth because it's their destined promised land. The Skrulls must live in hiding in an abandoned nuclear power plant just so they can be themselves. They just want a home where they don't have to wear skin that isn't their own.
Oh, your own skin.
Gravik fuels the anger of his people, radicalizing them against humanity, justifying terrorist attacks to achieve their goals. And that goal seems to be to detonate a dirty bomb and start a war between the United States and Russia. And, according to Talos, that could bring about the extinction of humanity.
better get your stank ass up out of here before I cause a nuclear holocaust up in here, fool.
So what's a dirty bomb anyway? Is it like a really stinky bomb that needs cleaning?
Very stinky and very dirty, the kind that kills you with radiation. A dirty bomb isn't as powerful as a nuke, but there's still a pretty big explosion. It also releases massive amounts of radiation. So I don't think that Gravik is planning to end humanity with one dirty bomb. The implication here is that he wants to start a war between two of the world's most powerful nations. You know, the kind of war where nukes fly everywhere and the Earth becomes a wasteland.
That's precisely what they want you to think.
But here's the thing, the dirty bomb is a red herring. The whole nuclear war thing is so 90s. We live in the age of information and misinformation. Social media and news outlets are the modern age battlefields. Paranoia and propaganda are bullets and missiles. Fake news and AI-generated lies are the news of this new world.
I never believe what I read in the press anyway.
Gravik's likely planning to destabilize the world's governments with fear and misinformation. He also clearly has a personal gripe with Fury. All of this fits perfectly with the spy thriller tone of the show. The Skrulls are at their best when they're used as a smoke and mirrors kind of threat, not as warriors on a CGI battlefield. Who do you trust part? The concept where anyone at any given point can be a Skrull. And the show handled it really well in the first episode. So, before we explain what the Skrulls are actually planning, we need to first explain the possible big twist of the show, and that is Nick Fury's dark secret. Back in the 1990s, Carol Danvers and Nick Fury promised to help the Skrulls find a new homeworld.
I'll help you find a home.
Liar!
However, despite the sheer size of the galaxy, let alone the universe, the Skrulls are still homeless. And from what we've seen, there are countless habitable planets pretty much everywhere. Most of them are brimming with civilizations, since, you know, many of them are used as celestial embryos. But there are still plenty of planets empty of any intelligent life forms. So, I find it very suspicious that in over 30 years, they couldn't find the Skrulls a new home. Carol is a very busy person, so I can understand if other cosmic catastrophes took precedence over helping the Skrulls, and Fury had a lot on his plate as well. But still, in 3 decades, they couldn't make the time for their green friends. It's very odd. But what if there's a dark reason why the Skrulls were never successful in finding a new home? Like it was in someone's best interest to keep them on Earth, where they could be under the control of a certain someone. And that someone is Nick Fury.
But why would he do that? The Skrulls are his friends.
True, but Fury has proven in the past that he's willing to make some really morally great decisions to protect the world. Remember how S.H.I.E.L.D. was planning to use Hydra weapons? Or those helicarriers that were built to Minority Report any potential threats?
We're going to neutralize a lot of threats before they even happen.
But the punishment usually came after the crime.
We can't afford to wait that long.
For a super spy, a network of shape-shifting agents is the ultimate weapon. He let the Skrulls into S.H.I.E.L.D., had Talos impersonate him and others. And this could come back to haunt Fury later in the show. And this is proven by what the show's executive producer, Jonathan Schwartz, spoke of in an interview with Vanity Fair. Schwartz said that the show will explore Fury's past sins and their ramifications. Fury might have seen the light after S.H.I.E.L.D. was infiltrated by Hydra, but before that, he was a by all means kind of guy.
I didn't know about all this. Even if you had, would you have told me? Would you compartmentalize that too?
What better spies could you ask for than ones that can take the shape of anyone? They can infiltrate any organization, any government, give Fury eyes and ears everywhere. Instead of eliminating one terrorist group's cell, he can replace the members and leaders of multiple groups and bring the entire network down from the inside. Or do something far more sinister, have those terrorists do the dirty work for him. The same way that Gravik is using the radical group AAR.
Americans Against Russia.
So while Fury really wants to help his friends, the potential world-ending events just kept piling on. It became simply easier to relegate the quest for a new Skrull world in favor of protecting his world.
We've been helping you for all these years to ensure that you kept your promise.
And at some point, the lie became too dirty and too big, so Fury had to keep the Skrulls under control. After the access he gave them over the course of 30 years, they could be a threat even bigger than Thanos.
What?
Unlike the Mad Titan who retired on a farm, the Skrulls want Earth for themselves, and they don't want to share. The Skrulls might have started seeing Earth as their new world. After all, this is where Captain Marvel stopped the Kree from killing their entire race. Earth is the first world they felt relatively safe on since they were displaced. So, unlike the comics, Earth is seen as a new genesis for the Skrull people. This is why they want to conquer it.
You are the cause. Not the cause. The cause is home.
This adds an ironic twist to Gravik's motivation, since he can easily make the case for why the Skrulls must take Earth by force. Because there is no place in the universe where they can be safe. The Skrulls gave humanity 30 years and served like pawns, all for a broken promise. This can also explain why Fury is so depressed after the snap. Being wiped from existence made him realize his mistakes, but at the same time, his worst fear for the Skrulls are coming true with Gravik. After the blip, Fury left Earth and he's been skulking around on Saber. That's the space station that's orbiting the planet. The snap clearly shocked Fury to the point that he abandoned the Skrulls, and this is what led to the Skrulls' attack in the show. Now, I believe that part of Gravik's plan includes the Super Skrulls.
Super Skrulls, like flying and shooting lasers from their eyes?
That and more. Super Skrulls are a big deal in the Skrull stories in the comics. Normally, Skrulls just shapeshift. Super Skrulls are like super soldiers. They are enhanced and can mimic the abilities of others like the Avengers. The most notable Super Skrull is Clerk. He has the abilities of all the Fantastic Four combined. And based on the trailers, Gravik will become a Super Skrull since he gains abilities. He appears to be able to stretch his arms like Mr. Fantastic.
She called me Mr. Bombastic, very fantastic. Touch me on the box, she says I'm Mr. Rude.
And it's possible that Fury has something the Skrulls use to create the Super Skrull, like some experimental super soldier serum or something similar. So, this whole dirty bomb business might just be a misdirect to get Fury back to Earth, and then to extract information from his head to create an army of Super Skrulls.
And I'm the last person standing between them and what they really want.
After all, if the Skrulls want to take over the world, they will need to fight the Avengers. But here's the thing, I believe that there's a far bigger twist in this show. Something that will completely subvert the expectations and even have huge ramifications for the future of the MCU.
And stop micro hooking, just tell us.
Okay, what if the Skrulls are actually working for the government? Not for Fury, not for whatever's left of S.H.I.E.L.D., and not even for the president. No, he's working for the next guy who's going to be in charge of the United States of America. And that is none other than Thunderbolt Ross. He is returning to the MCU in Captain America Brave New World. Harrison Ford is replacing William Hurt, who passed away in 2022. And here's the thing, Marvel confirmed that Ross will be president in Brave New World. So this is very interesting since we see the president in Secret Invasion, and it's this guy. His name is Ritson. We also see a Skrull attack on what seems to be a presidential
about to see my nigga Henry Ford in the MC universe.
And that's how Ross becomes president. And this is where the Skrull conspiracy starts to really take shape. The aftermath of Secret Invasion started a chain of events that led to one of my favorite story arcs in Marvel Comics, and that is Dark Reign. You see, Norman Osborn became a hero after he helped save the world from the Skrulls. He was, of course, still a bad guy and a villain, but perception of the public was that he was key to stopping the Skrull invasion. In the aftermath, he was given ultimate political and military power. What could possibly go wrong? Now this led to Osborn transforming S.H.I.E.L.D. into its evil version called Hammer. He had the power over superheroes since he was in charge of the Superhuman Registration Act, which effectively meant that he became the Avengers' boss. Norman assembled the Thunderbolts, a team of bad guys pretending to be government heroes. And what do you know? We're about to get a Thunderbolts movie. And then he transformed the Thunderbolts into the Dark Avengers, a group of villains who pretended to be the Avengers. It was fire, man. It was so good. And based on what we've established in Phase 4 and what's coming up in the future, my theory is that we're getting a version of Dark Reign in the MCU. And it all starts with Secret Invasion. And this is why I believe that Gravik is actually working for Thunderbolt Ross. Ross has always had a vendetta against superheroes. At first, it was personal, since his daughter's ex-boyfriend turned into a big giant rage monster. After vanishing for a while, he returned in Captain America Civil War. He was promoted to Secretary of State, and he used his position to spearhead the Sokovia Accords.
You're putting special ops on this.
What happens when the shooting starts? Will you kill Steve Rogers?
If you're provoked.
I highly doubt that Ross is happy about the Accords getting revoked. Wakanda Forever confirmed that Ross was replaced as U.S. State Secretary by this guy who's played by Richard Schiff, who now holds his position. So it's unclear what this means for Ross. He might have another powerful role in the government, but we know that the government is taking steps against enhanced individuals. Damage Control is pretty much a police force that enforces superheroes, and the government is even creating its own superheroes now. There's something being planned behind the scenes, and Ross might be the one who's behind it all. And don't forget about Valentina Allegra de Fontaine.
So you can just call me Val.
She is the head of the CIA, and based on what she told John Walker, something big is going to happen very soon.
Things are about to get weird. So when they do,
we're not going to need Captain America. That something might be the Skrulls' attack. After Thanos, the government quickly forgot about the Sokovia Accords, because how could they arrest heroes when they just saved the whole universe? So maybe Ross became disillusioned with the government, and he decided to take drastic steps to achieve ultimate power.
You don't want the truth because deep down in places you talk about at parties. You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall.
All he needed was a boogeyman, and that is the Skrulls, a threat that will create chaos and paranoia. The opening scene of the show supports this. Agent Prescott warning about the Skrulls sort of sounds like a bunch of tinfoil hat conspiracy theories and fake news. Thunderbolt Ross and his friends can use those exact things to achieve ultimate political power.
Why did we stuff Reese's Take 5 with 5 flavors? Because you can't handle 6!
Play on the fears of the public by making the Skrulls an alien invading nightmare that infiltrated every level of the world's infrastructure. Once the world discovers about the Skrulls, people will start shooting their neighbors out of fear that they might be shape-shifting aliens. Even the Avengers cannot be trusted because what if they were replaced by the Skrulls? Who can you trust at that point?
Introduce a little anarchy, upset the established order, and everything becomes chaos.
And then Ross will drop a bombshell, revealing that Nick Fury opened the gates for the Skrull. He kept them a secret for 3 decades. He let them infiltrate S.H.I.E.L.D. This invasion was all his fault. He will also use the Skrulls to turn the world on the Avengers, sort of like Mysterio in Far From Home.
People need to believe, and nowadays, they don't believe anything.
And then Ross can swoop right in and save the world from the evil aliens with his government-issued superheroes. And after that, he gets voted in as president and he becomes the most powerful man in the world. And then he starts a new world order.
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
Also, Ross will probably become the Red Hulk in Captain America Brave New World. Don't forget that the government is also planning to destabilize Wakanda and steal their vibranium.
Ever thought what we would be doing if the US was the only country in the world with vibranium?
I actually read about that.
So all of this can lead to a movie in Phase 6 that will be the crescendo of this story arc. Sort of like Civil War, but more of like Earth-based superheroes versus Ross and his government. So why do the Skrulls work for Ross? Well, it could be that he promised Gravik a Skrull nation once it's all done. A place where they can be safe, where they will no longer be used by others, where they can live as people in their own skin. And then he will obviously betray them and nuke the whole place just for good measure.
No nukes! No nukes!
Now, of course, it's possible that Gravik is playing his own game. He and his people were used by Fury for years, so he isn't going to trust another human's promises. But he might use Ross to achieve his own goals, like him and his Skrulls assimilating Ross's New World Order and controlling it from the inside. And that's what the Skrulls are actually planning. This is all one giant conspiracy. So what do you think? Did we just crack the code, or is our story way too ambitious? Let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Arian.